And this can apply to so many other cultures, is realizing that your own foods are healthy. And I think there's that very common myth that Mexican food in particular is unhealthy. It's not great for you. I hear a lot about, oh, especially in conversations around like diabetes. There's so much good stuff in the food that we've grown up with.
Hey everyone, welcome to Food Culture Curious, the podcast where we dive into the intersection of culture and nutrition. I'm your host, Arely Gutierrez, a Latina registered dietitian, and I'm here to explore how cultural inclusivity can transform our approach to food, health, and well-being. Each episode aims to empower you to better understand and serve diverse communities with practical insights, personal stories, and expert advice. If you find this podcast valuable, don't forget to hit that follow button, leave us a review, and share it on your socials. You can find us as at Food Culture Curious. Hey everyone, welcome to Food Culture Curious. My name is Arely. I'm a registered dietitian on a mission to promote cultural inclusion in the nutrition space. Today we have with us Amanda Sauceda. She is a pizza-loving registered dietitian, and she focuses on using mindfulness to improve gut health. She's also a lecturer at CSU Long Beach, where she teaches Intro to Nutrition. As a nutrition communicator and educator, her goal is to give real life nutrition guidance that helps people feel better in their bodies, have fun with food without giving up their favorites, and find ways to a gut friendly lifestyle. She created the Mindful Gut, which is an approach that blends science and strategy to help people tap into their intuition and build gut health habits that last a lifetime. Thank you for being here, Amanda.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk.
Yeah. So I first met you at an event where you gave a presentation about how to be more culturally inclusive in the gut health space. And as
Yeah.
a fellow Latina, it was really inspiring to see examples of what that would look like for a Hispanic patient. So that's why I really wanted to have you on, and so you can share little nuggets of wisdom with us about how we, whoever is listening, right? Healthcare professionals,
Yeah.
dietitians, can learn how to be more culturally inclusive in this gut health space. So we can go ahead and jump right into it. Can you tell
All
us a
right.
little bit about your cultural backgrounds? What factors affect your food culture?
Yeah, so my background really is my grandparents are from Mexico. Some of my grandparents were from Texas. And it's having that like Mexican American kind of background has really shaped a lot of the food recommendations I give. And I was looking at my Instagram stories the other day, just reflecting back, and I'm like, oh, I guess I do make a lot of different like salsas. Like I made a chili verde the other day, and I was like, but it honestly didn't turn out very good. I don't know what went wrong. I don't know what went wrong. Um, but a lot of my background has influenced how I taught and or how I communicated even as a student. I remember one class that we had to do was give an educational presentation, and it wasn't a specific nutrition course. It was just like a education class, and I obviously was going to do food, and I ended up doing like a demo on how to make enchiladas, and that was really exciting for me. And one of my first memories of bringing pieces of my culture into the dietetic space as more of a legit thing, not just, oh, I want to be nutrition, but that was, okay, I'm in this program now. And this is one of my first things I'm doing. And ever since then, I've always wanted to be a dietitian. And what's funny is having this background being Mexican American, I didn't realize how there weren't a lot of other people of color in nutrition, to be
Hmm.
honest. And it was, to be quite frank, I didn't realize until I went to a fancy and I was like, oh, because I think growing up in Southern California, it's so diverse. There's so many different people. And so I'm happy to see more representation of a wide variety of cultures within the nutrition space because yeah, it's just exciting. I don't know if I completely answer your question. I just had a lot of memories pop up. But yeah, it's a good place to get us started.
Yeah, absolutely. I can relate to a lot of that. I grew up in South Texas, right on the border. So I never felt like a minority
Yeah,
until,
exactly.
yeah, until one moving to Houston, even though it's still very diverse here compared to other places. and then entering the nutrition education space. And there are very few dietitians
Yeah.
of color, and just realizing how is it that there is such a need for diversity in dietetics, but that there's so many barriers. That's not the reality.
Yeah, that exists.
But here we are, making a
Yes,
difference where we can.
exactly.
And so I know you mentioned you're Mexican American, your grandparents, some are from Texas, some are from Mexico. Do you feel like now that you're an adult, you're trying to learn more about your heritage or learn more about your cultural foods?
Yeah, and I would say these last 2 years have been a bigger interest for myself personally to
Mhm.
explore more cultural foods. I think one of my core memories of cultural foods that has persisted throughout my life has been making tamales during Christmas, like the holidays. That's always like a big tradition that we had. But growing up when you're younger, you're the one that has to spread the masa. Like that's the extent
Mhm.
of our job, or like folding. I didn't do the folding. I don't have a lot of detailed work, so I wasn't allowed to do the folding, but I could spread the masa. But these last 2 years, I feel like I've really explored, and interestingly enough, I think TikTok has really inspired me quite a bit about exploring and making my own recipes from my culture and other cultures. There's this one page, I can't remember her page name, but it was like day blah 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 documenting Mexican recipes for my kids. And I stumbled upon that. And so she has all these videos of all these recipes that she's documenting for her children. And I think those types of videos have really inspired me. So like the chili verde, like chili Colorado, or making my own salsa. I just recently saw a recipe to make a fermented salsa, which is new to me. And then coming from gut health, I was like intrigued, obviously.
Yeah.
I think food has really been my biggest way, especially of late, to connect with my culture in a way that I've never had before. And I think it's also layered in with the fact that I don't speak Spanish. And so, not speaking Spanish, being Latina has been an interesting course to navigate. Like people
Mhm.
either assume or they're like, "Oh, what are you?" Like I cannot tell you how many times I've gotten asked that question. So I've always felt like I was missing something because either people didn't know my background of being Mexican, and then layered with the fact that I never spoke Spanish. So I think food has been a way for me to reconnect in ways that I haven't been able to.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And especially once you're second generation, third generation,
Mhm.
there's a lot of assimilation that happens.
Yeah.
So you lose some of that language. And then even for myself, like my parents are from Mexico, but because I was raised in South Texas, they made food differently just because of
Yeah.
what was available in the
Hmm.
region. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So the way my mom makes enchiladas is not the way that they make them in Mexico because she was just using this is what I had.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so all of that just influences our culture over time. But I know exactly who you're talking about as far as
Oh, do you?
the
Oh, I
lady
can't
on
remember her name.
TikTok. No, I
Yes.
can't remember the name, but exactly
Yeah.
what you said, like day 300 documenting recipes for my kids. And that's beautiful because you do lose those
Hmm.
recipes over time.
And no one measures.
Yes.
And it's that's like the other thing. Like when my mom makes salsa, she doesn't measure. She like goes by smell and taste.
That's funny. I tried to ask my mother-in-law to teach me how to make flour tortillas.
Mhm.
And so she did it in front of me, and I'm like, okay, so how much do you add? And she's, when it feels like this or it
Yeah,
rolls
like
like
the
that.
tile.
Oh, okay.
E- Exactly.
They
My
measure
my
with their heart.
yeah, she makes like albondigas like really good, and I'm just like, I'll just let you make it. Like I'm not it's so good. I'm not even gonna try.
But that's awesome that you're trying to reconnect with your culture. So I feel like I'm in a similar journey as well. And so can you tell us a little bit about, I know you mentioned the holidays and some of these core memories were like making tamales during Christmas. Are there any other core foods that you remember growing up, either during the holidays or special occasions?
Ooh, maybe not a core food, but like a whatchamacallit? Not device, but like a molcajete. And like my grandma like making salsa and like grinding the garlic. And I just have a core memory of that, like smelling that. So not necessarily a food, but a cooking tool that was traditional that I remember I have core memories of. I also have some interesting, I don't know if it's like a seasonal because I try to make it a lot, but like canela, like cinnamon tea, having the cinnamon sticks just boiling in the water
Yeah.
and smelling that, I think. And I try to make it often, and my mom makes it often as well. And then one of my other grandmas, she made cakes, not necessarily traditional food, but she was just so known for her baking. And I think that is another core memory around food that I had. Particularly, she made her own whipped cream. Again, not traditional food, but this is just memories that are coming up. She made her own whipped cream and I would eat it with Jello. And that would be my most favorite thing. And I would spend some summers with her and just sitting and eating the whipped cream with the Jello. So there's quite a few things that come up. And I think one that has persisted and one that I still do, actually, I've started to do weekly almost, is making my own beans. And I think beans and having a bean burrito after school was like the epitome of a great after school snack. And I love beans so much, and making them myself now from dried versus getting a can of them, which I love canned food, like super easy, but there's something special about having dried beans and the taste is just a little bit different. So those are a couple of the things that have come up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love to hear now that I've heard your presentation how some of these foods that are integral to our culture are actually so great for gut health.
Yeah.
So I know beans is one that you mentioned. Would you mind telling us just a little bit about gut health and how, if you're working with a Latino patient or a Hispanic patient, what would
Yeah.
be more culturally friendly examples for them?
I think one of the things that was a bit of a switch that I've had to think about in my own head is the fact that sometimes I see beans and I just think like beans, ooh, yummy. But because it's been such a big part of my life, I didn't realize, oh, beans high fiber, protein, you know what I mean? I just saw it as like a yummy food I've had all my life. Like salsa, I've seen it as a yummy condiment I've had all my life, put on almost anything and everything that needed a little extra oomph, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that has been a mind switch for me too, because I just see it as food because it was just so integral to my life that I've no, that's also like a great source of nutrition. And when we think about gut health, two big things come up that I think, and particularly Mexican food, really stands out for is fiber, but also just plant variety. So one of the things that we see is that having a more diverse plant diet, which and plants could be anything that grew underground, can help with a more diverse gut microbiome, which is thought to be a good sign of a healthy gut. And so when I think of some of these foods, especially like salsa, that's a blend. It's not just one vegetable. It's chilies and cilantro and a tomato, and maybe we're doing a green salsa. Now we got tomatillo. Such an easy way for us to get plant variety with just with salsa alone. But all of these other foods, like my mother-in-law is from Mexico, so my husband's first generation, and she was making this pumpkin, and it was so good with like pumpkin and milk. So taking like having a little bit of a mind switch and looking at your food that you already eat, and maybe in a different light, and realize that you're not starting from ground zero, particularly when it comes to gut health goals of increasing fiber or increasing plant variety.
Exactly. It really reminds me of when I'm talking to even not just patients, but just people, and they
Yeah,
say something like, can you write me a meal plan? And I have to try to explain to them, like, you're probably
yeah,
already eating very nourishing foods, whatever culture you are, or whatever
yeah.
types of
Background.
foods you eat, yeah,
Yeah,
whatever your background is, you're probably already having nutritious foods. It would just be working with a dietitian to tailor how much, how we're cooking
exactly.
it, how we're putting it together. So, like you said, you don't have to start from ground zero. It's just figuring out what from the foods you already eat
Yeah,
can you include and then how.
yeah.
So, when you're trying to work with patients that are focused on gut health, you mentioned diversity, you mentioned fiber. Are there any other main things that you look for to
Mhm.
adjust in their diet to help them?
Yeah, I think the other one, and I was just talking about this just a couple days ago, that I personally didn't grow up with a lot of this, but it's really good for the gut is fermented foods. And especially there's a lot of conversation like, should I take a probiotic? Should I not take a probiotic? We hear a lot about probiotics. And the thing about probiotics is you really have to match the strain of bacteria to whatever health condition you're looking for. And I would say the average person who's looking just to improve their gut health, just to have a healthy gut, really don't need to start with probiotics. I think one of the best places to start is fermented foods because it can be a source of live and active culture. So you can be getting some good bacteria for your gut. On top of that, fermented foods can also have increased digestibility, can also have potentially increase in vitamins in the food. So it's not just the bacteria you'll get, the good bacteria, but you'll also get some additional benefits as well. So I think fermented foods is a place that many people can improve upon, especially if you didn't grow up eating a lot of them. I think that's another good area that I try to have people focus in on.
Yeah, and do you feel like for the fermented foods, are there any examples from the Latino food culture, or is this one where you might have to try things that you maybe are not familiar with?
Yeah, so I think a bit of both. I think there's quite a few different fermented foods across different cultures that can be great to include, but there are some within the Latino culture that are already there for you. So one of the first fermented foods that I had a couple years ago, I would always have pupusas, and I was like, what is this little tangy, amazing little slaw situation now we have here? And that's when I learned about like what cortizo was and just like a spicy cousin to sauerkraut. And so that was one of the first fermented foods that I made actually was cortizo. And I really like it. And so that's like a great thing to add to so many other things, not just pupusas, which I haven't had in a while and now I need to get because now it's on my mind. Another one that I'm thinking of that is becoming more mainstream, like I saw it at the shelves on Sprouts, is tepache, which is like a
Mm.
fermented drink. Or it's not necessarily like a Latino one, but I think it goes well with a lot of Hispanic dishes. You could ferment onions, like red onion, and do a kind of like pickled red onion, but maybe ferment them versus just straight pickling. And I think that can work well with a lot of dishes. Yeah, there's quite a few out there. And dairy wise, obviously, yogurt is a big one. That's one that I had to learn. I didn't like it at first. To be honest, I was not a fan. And now look at me, I'm eating plain yogurt by itself.
Wow.
So I think that's one thing to keep in mind with fermented foods and just a good outlook to have around a lot of foods is don't just try it once and let it go. Be like, oh, I don't like it. Be curious about food and try it out in different ways. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. And I'll be honest, I don't like fish. Fish is great, but I'm working my way. Working my way.
Yeah, I can definitely relate. Especially being Mexican, people are always surprised that I don't like cilantro.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
but
if you have that gene,
I feel
especially,
like I do. I feel like I
yeah,
do. So to me, it tastes very bitter. It tastes like soap. But I'm trying to
yeah.
learn to tolerate more and more because I can do it when it's mixed in to the
Oh,
guisados and
like,
the
yeah,
salsas. Like when it's part
yeah.
of the flavor, it's fine. It's when it's by itself.
Sprinkled on a taco or something like that.
Yeah. So I'm trying to
Yeah.
build up more tolerance to
And
that.
sometimes you're not. Sometimes it's just not a thing for people. That's
Yeah.
okay. But to continue trying. And yeah, like especially with fermented foods, continue to try. They work well with a lot of different dishes. So maybe like a fermented onion could be a really nice place to start because so many people love onion and onion complements and it makes it sweeter too. So it's not so sharp tasting. It
Mhm.
works really well.
That's a really great example. I think I had heard about curtido. I did not realize it was fermented, so that's awesome to try to
Mhm.
incorporate more often. But when I thought of fermented foods, I think I always jump to kimchi and
Yeah.
things that are more mainstream or more popular.
Yeah.
So those are really great examples. Thank you
Yeah.
for
I
that.
love kimchi.
So another question I had for you, since you mentioned the té de canela earlier. I
Mhm.
know, especially in the Hispanic culture, we put a big emphasis on teas and teas being
Yeah.
good for your health for a variety of reasons. Are there any teas that you've seen that it's either custom
Mhm.
or that there maybe even be some evidence for as far as teas being helpful with gut health?
Ooh, that's a really good question. And I love tea. And I feel like this is one area that I want to learn more about because there's so many different like herbal blends out there that you could have. Like this morning, I actually had a blend. It's supposed to be like helpful for stress, and it's just really yummy to enjoy.
Mm.
But two teas do come to mind that are very easily accessible and can work really well for actually three teas that come to mind that can work really well for your gut. One is an absolute favorite of mine, and that's ginger. Ginger tea can be really helpful if someone's just having a little bit of an upset stomach or maybe feeling a little nauseous. I really like ginger. I like to use fresh ginger actually to make the tea. I think it has a stronger flavor and just a little bit more of the properties of the ginger in there, like those healthy components in there. And so to make, if you're using fresh ginger, it does take a little bit of a time to make, unfortunately, at least a half hour to simmer it in some water to get that going. But
For
I
it
think
to
ginger,
infuse.
yes, infuse, there we go, like to infuse into the water. So ginger is a good one. Another one that can be good is I like to use this after if you feel like you've had a bit of a heavier meal, or you just feel a little bit unsettled, maybe. Another alternative is peppermint. So peppermint's a good one. In fact, this brings back another memory of my grandma. She had fresh mint that would she would grow by the front door, and so sometimes she would just pick a few mint leaves and put it into some water and make us some mint tea. So peppermint or just mint can be really
Mhm.
helpful. Mint grows very easily. So if you're looking to have a project this spring or whatever, mint could be a nice one, but do it in containers because it gets a little crazy if you
Yep.
grow mint. And then another one that I think is really good all around that I hear quite a bit too talked about. There's an herbal podcast that I like to listen to, and they talk about like herbal medicine and herbal and plants and things like that is chamomile. And chamomile is really neutral tasting, really nice to have. I like to sip on chamomile, especially if you feel like your stomach is feeling stressed just because you're stressed, because we have that mind gut connection. I think chamomile can be a really nice way to bring stress down in both places, both your mind and the gut. And can also be helpful for just settling an upset stomach. So those are probably my three go-to teas that I like to have, and you can easily find them.
That's something I had not put together is how, because I like having chamomile before bed to just
Yeah.
settle down,
Soothing.
but I wouldn't think that's also helping your gut because it's helping with the stress and it's helping with getting you ready
Yeah.
for bed. So that's such a great example that I just hadn't put it together how
Yeah.
I guess we think a lot about food when we're thinking about gut health, but you're right,
Yeah.
stress is so
Mhm.
important when it comes to gut health as well.
It's underrated. And even I know, I say this all the time. I know, but I don't know. You know what I mean? Until you make these connections. And stress has a huge impact. And a good amount of times, it's not necessarily what we're eating, but how we're eating or like how we're approaching our meal. And so chamomile, and even if it's not chamomile, maybe just like the act of having a tea and prepping that tea and holding that warm cup in your hand can be a practice in mindfulness and a practice of stress reduction.
That's amazing. So, when you're talking to your patients, do you give them any recommendations as far as like what you just mentioned, like preparing a tea or different things that they can do that's related to the food, but that's actually helping address the stress?
Yeah. I think so something like that, like the tea or like coffee. Usually people like warm drinks, so that's one thing that I do talk about, and that's actually a good post to probably make. So I think whether it's coffee, and there is some research for coffee being good for the gut, and there's also people where caffeine just does not agree with them. So I think holding that warm drink, or one other area that I think can be helpful of just like centering is even simply just chopping vegetables. I am a fan of soup. I will eat soup in 100+ degree weather. I don't care. I think soups are one of the most nourishing things.
Yeah.
And so when I say chopping things in my mind, I'm already chopping things to make a soup because I think soups really hit on a lot of stuff like variety. Again, we have that warm liquid that kind of just is soothing. Obviously, if you're not a soup and hot weather person, this wouldn't not be appropriate for you. But even just like the simple act of prepping your meals and like infusing that love and attention to it, I think
Mhm.
does add something. Obviously, we would never in science be able to quantify that, but I think it does add a nice layer of mindfulness. And mindfulness is really just about being aware and being intentional. And I think that is where we can really help improve. Like, how am I feeling right now as I'm chopping this carrot? Or maybe you're just turning off the world and just chopping this carrot and then moving on to your next thing. Another thing that I've actually been doing lately that I think can be really helpful for the gut is this idea of grounding, of like you like putting your feet in the dirt and or in the grass and just like
Mhm.
literally connecting with just feeling in that moment. But have you ever done a sound bath before? Have you ever heard of
No.
sound baths? Okay, so sound baths are just basically being bathed in really soothing sounds. And my Calm app that I have on my phone has like different sound baths, or you can just like YouTube sound baths. But one thing that I've done, especially if I feel like I've been working and I'm getting worked up because I've been working or I need a break, I'll just go outside and my version of a sound bath will just be like concentrating on hearing the birds chirp, the cars drive by. I'll make that into my own soothing sounds and just realize that things are okay. Like the world is worlding, everything is normal, and using that as a moment of centering. So when we think about improving gut health, it's not solely like the food and the things that are on our plate, but we also want to look at addressing the mental load, again, going back to that connection with the gut. So those are some of the things that I can think of: the act of prepping tea, the act of making your food, and taking time away just to recenter.
I love that. And I never believed people because I was always a dietitian that didn't like to cook
Uh-huh.
until recently when I started trying to learn more about my cultural foods. A lot of it is learning how to make it from scratch, right?
Mm.
So before that, when people would tell me, "Oh, I love cooking. It's how I get into flow. It's how I center myself. I find it meditative." I would just be like, "What do you mean? Like it sounds stressful because then you have all these
Yeah.
dishes you need to clean." And
I will
it was,
say that is not, I will say I'm not a fan of washing dishes.
yeah.
Yeah.
But one of my friends, her and I agreed that once a month we would get together and we would learn how to
Mhm.
make a new dish that we've never done
Oh, I
before.
love that.
Yeah, last month it was mole. The month before that it was Korean tofu soup. And so she's really good at cooking, baking. She knows how to
Mhm.
chop,
Oh,
second
like
nature.
pro. Yeah.
Yeah, and so she was teaching me like how to
Hmm.
hold the knife and how to chop the
Hmm.
vegetables. And I was surprised because I actually found it very soothing to just be focused on like this one
One
thing.
thing.
So when you mentioned your Calm app, you know what I pictured?
Huh.
There's some sessions on there where it's
Yeah.
how to walk mindfully, how
Oh,
to,
yeah, I've seen
so and
those.
so mindfully. They should have one for preparing your meal mindfully,
Ooh,
chopping
that's a
your
good one. Yeah.
vegetable.
Yeah, and I think too, to add to that, like not every meal needs to be prepped mindfully. Not every dish needs to be meditative. So I think that's also another common misconception around your gut health is that your gut is going to be perfect, and there's no such thing as like a perfect gut or perfect digestion 100% of the time. So letting go of some of this idea that everything has to be meditative or everything has to be mindful. No, it doesn't. We don't want to think like it's setting us up for failure to think like
I think you have a great voice for a meditation app.
that. My friend does actually. She's like a really soothing voice. Oh my God, I think she's really good.
So if you ever do a reel or something where you're like, spend 30 seconds chopping this vegetable with me, I'll be
Yeah.
there.
You know what? Maybe I should. I'll try. That's actually really good. That's a smart idea for the Calm app people is to make like a meditative cooking video.
Awesome. All right, Amanda, thank you so much. Do you have any final insights for dietitians or healthcare professionals that are trying to be more culturally inclusive in this gut mindfulness space?
Yeah, actually, so I think one of the things you first asked me about like memories around food, I think could be a really great way for dietitians and people alike to A, learn more about other cultures, and B, to actually pull something meaningful from them where they make connections because it's, oh, what are you going to make for dinner this week? Nothing comes to mind. Like that's it's a little bit harder, but if you ask somebody like what was your favorite dinner growing up? Or what was one of your special dinners that your parents made or whoever made? I think pulling on memories as a way to springboard to learn more about someone's culture, to learn more about someone's background, or to really just get the conversation going, whether it's between a dietitian and their patient or their client. when we talk about like tailoring what they're eating, I think that is a really amazing place to start and can really lead to some very meaningful conversations that lead to change and help people get to their goals that they're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. Learning what's important to them.
Exactly.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for the time that you've spent with us today. I really appreciate you.
Thank you
Um,
for having me.
of course, if somebody wants to work with you or wants to be part of, you mentioned you have a group program that you're thinking of
Yeah.
doing soon. How can they get in touch with you? What would they have to look forward to when working with you?
Yeah, so the easiest place to find me is really Instagram, and my handle is at guthealth.nutritionist, or joining my email list. I'm planning on launching a group program or classes I haven't quite nailed down yet, but along the lines of what we talked about, what are things that we can do to help improve your gut health? And my approach really is the fact that there is no one version of gut healthy. Everyone's version of gut healthy or gut friendly is very unique to them. And bringing in mindfulness in the mindful gut is like, how can I find it? And that's what I hope to lead people towards, is finding their own version of, okay, how can I increase plant diversity or fermented foods and things like that? So that's going to be coming everyone's way soon. And Instagram probably is the best place, or joining my email list is the best place to learn more.
Well, thank you again. I will be on the lookout for that reel if you make
Oh,
one
yes.
about
Yeah.
preparing the tea.
Yeah, that's a good one.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. We'll catch you next time. If you are interested in supporting this podcast, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/food culture curious. Or as always, you can support by sharing, following, or rating this podcast. Every click from y'all means the world to me. And now for a quick disclaimer. Food Culture Curious is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not take the place of medical advice from licensed healthcare professionals. If you need to seek medical advice, please speak to your healthcare provider. Thank you for listening.